Hello everyone, this is G331979 here, and this is the topic is the real definitions of racism, part 2 of part 4. And back on the last video I posted up on the third part of the second sequel, about how the Moors invade, Europe. Now I'm going to give something that people didn't pay attention to, what Tito the Fresh said and what I said in the first 3 videos on this subject. And the fact of the matter is, what other continent invaded Europe in history? Twice. What other continent? Africa. Twice. First time during Carthaginian Empire. And then the second time during the Moors and the other tribes of Africa in the north west and the northeast, the far northeast. This, after the 830 plus year reign of the Moors from the last video I posted, last up to 1458, all the Jesuits and part of the Rosicrucians and the Templar Knights and all the other churches that support the Vatican, along with a lot of Khazars, or known as the Ashkenazi, which they call themselves the Jews today, got together in Europe and got in part of Europe monarchy and says, look, we can't have these so-called Africans, taking over the continent. Now, let me give you a disclaimer for those that are white and listening. When the Moors came, just remember, prior to the Moors came, Europe collapsed. It was disintegrating when Rome fell. And Rome, like myself said before and Tito the First said, broke up to fragmented to churches as a form of nation states. Actually, the churches were your court, your senate, your bank, and your military headquarters, believe it or not, and were your institutions for educational purposes. Well, going back to what I'll try to get the point, when Carthage was overthrown by the Romans, there was a general named Scipio Africanus. Pay attention to that name, Scipio Africanus. So by the folks that keep calling themselves, say, African American, which there's no such thing as that term, because Africa never claimed it. So I don't know why black folks keep uttering that word every fucking day of the week. You're not African American. You're American. You're Aboriginal Negroid American. That's it. You should not even utter the word black. And I know that's a hard, word to break off from, but that's a status. I digress. But when they name these captive African Carthaginians and call that part of Africa, including Egypt, eventually Rome did conquer Egypt. Took a millennia, but it did happen. They named that whole region Africa. Named after the general, I think it was a 5 or 6 star general called Scipio Africanus. Well, Africanus had a son. You gotta pay attention to his last name. I think his adopted son was, I think, Cyprico Asia Canis. Hence the term Asia came from. So you gotta realize that a lot of these continents were named after imperialistic conquering white men. When they explored the region, they actually took over the region. And they named it. So, back to the Moors and other Muslim and Islamics that ruled Europe for 830 years, left and right. Plus, in 211 AD, that's when they came in. For the first time, within, like I say, a generation, Europe started learning how to read again, learning mathematics again. Start having running water. Start learning how to manage sewage again. They start learning how to practice actually good hygiene, because for a long time, the first part of the Dark Ages, Europe was a diseased nation. The whole entire continent was disease infested. Nobody didn't want to do trade with them no more. They didn't want to catch the Black Plague. They started welcoming the best and brightest of Hellenistic forms of learning, like they once had. You know, like ancient forms of chemistry, which we take for granted today. Which everything that we learn today, they was doing it before then, before we even came to existence. But I digress. You know, everything went well. Europe did not force to convert into Islam or Muslim at all. They actually said, hey, you can practice your own shit just as long as you obey the laws and follow the regulations and rules and educate yourself and live a healthy, clean life. Everything would be great. And by then, there were more women than men in Europe. So obviously, we expect that to happen. A lot of the men genetically, a lot of the black men in Africa that moved to Europe genetically integrated with the white women in Europe, and they spread on to Western Europe very quickly. Within like 300-400 years, you already got black people there. But they were already there during the Roman Empire, so it was nothing new to them. So after the bullshit about the Renaissance, how they called it the rebirth of learning, was the biggest bullshit lie they ever told. When I was a child, when I was like 13 years old, and when they learned about the Renaissance for the upteen time, because at the time, when my generation grew up, they started teaching this shit pretty much in the first grade, if not kindergarten. So when I went up to these old libraries back in the day, I used to have books on top of books. This is before my old house got burned down. But anyway, I looked up all these books about the Renaissance. Yeah, it was rebirth of learning, mainly for the Catholic Church. But for like the regular, they call it the masses. That's another derogatory term nobody should not be using now. But when it came to the average day Joe, white man, they didn't have this requirement of learning. They were more dumbed down than ever before. Before that, when the blacks was there ruling shit, they had more education. They had access to healthy food, healthy, fresh, clean water, running water, better building materials, less disease, less war. They had proper sanctions of trade and immigration control. The moment they left, they went through turmoil. So when the Renaissance came around the 1500s, the Spanish Inquisition is at an all-time high. And I'm going to tell you what the Spanish Inquisition was all about. And they had nothing to purge out so-called mulattoes. Actually, the mulattoes and all the other blacks, including a lot of white Europeans, hated the Vatican. The Spain, which was predominantly the superpower, regulate. Even though supposedly they said during the 100 Years' War that French defeated the English and French became the dominant superpower, the dominant empire, which is bullshit. It was still Spain. Spain came up with the Spanish Inquisition with the help of the Moors and other black tribes, along with a lot of the white politicians at the time, to purge out these Khazar Jews. Because Europe always had a problem with the Khazar or the Ashkenazi Jews. This is the main reason why the Americas became what it became, because it was designed as a prison colony. Wherever you hear the term, wherever you guys hear a term called a colony, it's a formation of a prison. You cannot colonize something that was already occupied before your existence. It's impossible. You have to colonize something that's uncharted and unoccupied. And since most of the Americas, from North America all the way to the edge of the South America, including the North and South Pacific, was pretty much already occupied for the most part, including the Caribbean and the West Indies, and the Mesoamerica. So the entire American region of the entire Western Hemisphere where we at today, black folks and white folks, was already occupied. What it was, this area was a dumping ground to get rid of the disease-infested whites, mostly Ashkenazi or known as Jews. They dumped them here. And along the way, because it wasn't good enough, they want to get rid of other peasants, like the Irish, like the Scottish, like the British Isles, you know, like a lot of Italians were dumped here because of slavery. When the Moors came, there was no slavery going on during the time when the Moors ruled Europe. Hell, when the Carthaginians ruled Europe, there was no slavery going around. They regulate trade and peace pretty much. Either it was an empire. Ain't that something? But then when they started using United States, Canada, the Caribbean, the Caribbean, and the West Indies, and part of the Florida Keys, including Cuba, as a dumping ground. They went on to Mexico, used it as a dumping ground. They went on throughout the rest of the Mesoamerica, that's bottom edge of Central America, as a dumping ground. Start seeing South America becoming a dumping ground. They tried that in the Pacific Islands, and I give them credit. They pretty much, for the most part, as the years went by, bullied a lot of white people out of existence. That's what happens when you go to someone else's house where you don't belong and try to do a home invasion and expect them to be honky-dorky and let you come in and run the train on their wife, women, and children and young men. I give them that. Because around the exact same time, they try to do that in West Africa. Now, I'm going to talk about that. I don't know if I got enough time, but I'm going to try to wrap this up real quick and then probably make another part of this. The main reason why the whites were used here as a dumping ground primarily was from the help of the Moors. Yes, people, yes, black folks in America, your fellow so-called African counterpart, which we're not their counterpart, we're not African, orchestrated a prison enslavement detainment campaign against European white impoverished people, because Europe was broke still, even though Spain was a superpower, and imprison and clean up the indigenous inhabitants of the Aboriginal blacks, that's us, and the indigenous Mongoloids, okay, Indian tribes. So it was a total 200 tribes in the United States alone, and nearly half of them got wiped out. If not, between, I say, 100 to 50 tribes out of 200, I think, got wiped out, or nearly wiped out. They set you up. This is why Africa disrespect Americans in general. They look down on you like you're a piece of shit. They refer to us as kata, which is a slang derogatory word as calling us animals. And I look at it, hey, you know, you motherfuckers can't even regulate your own fucking country. Like, say, for example, South Africa, you got white people taking up doing land grabbing, but you want to come up here and talk shit? Fuck you. But I digress. But when the Bacon Rebellion, fast forward to when the Bacon Rebellion started, in 1667 to be exact, after the rebellion ended, you know, a lot of Moors were here. They settled in America. They never integrated with black folks. So you got some Moorish family descendants that's still alive to this day, that's living in America. Those are your African Americans. I'm not African American. Those are the ones that took 1.3% of the black population that was in the South alone and had them enslaved. Those are the ones that you need to take your anger out. With the help of the white Jewish corporation. But I digress. When after the end of the Bacon Rebellion in 1667, they came up with 3 status in the United States. Well, technically 4. But I'm going to name the first 3. You black, you white, and you're Indian. The Mongoloids, anyway. And which, by the way, you don't have to be a Mongoloid to be Indian. If you're indigenous here, you are a Indian. Look up the term. I'll digress on that. Just look it up. So blacks that subjected into government grouping, they took some of the blacks that was from the north and they kind of migrate them like herds into like Aboriginal or black Indian reservations. So you see those photos that they do like on PBS, talk about how blacks, slaves were integrated in, you know, native Indian American tribes. That is the biggest con job myth I ever fucking heard and seen in my goddamn life. Those were indigenous black reservations that's still around to this day. They kept them separate from the Mongoloid Indian tribes for the simple fact that they form a unification. They still do. There's still reservations that still have unification, but they have to keep them separate. If they ever meet and really unify, this nation known as the United States of America would change indefinitely. It would be a reverse apartheid, so to speak. That's what they're afraid of. That's what white supremacy is afraid of. Because it's all about benefits and privileges with these people. They don't have no rights. Whites in the United States, including their descendants on to this day, I'm going to tell you white folks, you never in your lifetime ever had unalienable and unalienable rights. You only had privileges and benefits. That's what you fought for. That's what you get. You never had rights. You were always the slaves. Actually, during slavery for those 400 years, out of that 1.3% of Negroes in the South that were slaves, you equal the bulk of the majority. Now that 1.3%, you equal about 98% of you were and still slaves. Let that soak in for a bit. For those 400 straight years, you were enslaved. Do you know who wrote and made the slave laws? Your federal, these stupid black Moors and your white Jewish counterparts. You know who put an end of slavery? It's not your white politicians. It's actually a lot of black folks or black Indian tribes and a lot of Mongoloid tribes and a few white politicians, mostly white females, try to get involved and try to end slavery. So they create laws to end that. It was not your everyday average Joe white politician. No. He wanted to keep the business going. Okay? He wanted to keep the business going. That's why they came up with the fake ass 13th Amendment. 13th Amendment, the original 13th Amendment, didn't have nothing to do with slavery. It had something to do with monarchy. That's another topic another time. But the 13th Amendment that everybody knows today is the fakest 13th Amendment of the face of the planet. That's why it got amended 18 times. The Constitution got amended 18 times. The whites did not want to end slavery. There was money involved. And a lot of these whites that owned slaves, both black, white, and Mongoloid, were Jewish, along with the Moors. Along with the black African American Moors, I should call them that. They create these weird terms. When they talk to you, a lot of these people talk to you with legalese. The average white folk don't know shit about legalese, black folk. They don't know shit. And by the way, what fucked up black folks was not integration. Because during slavery, integration was working fine. Granted, you were under the oppression of institutionalized racism. Therefore, you have institutionalized white supremacy. Now that integration was forcibly legalized, which there was no need to during the Boyd versus Brown education in 1964, there's no more institutionalized racism no more. It's a psychological, covert warfare. They don't need physical institutions no more because the United States is a fully corporation. That's why it's so easy to sue a goddamn corporation if they make a little slight racial remark joke. It don't even have to be about you. You could make crybaby about it and sue the fucking pants off and win. And bankrupt the corporation in one shot. Just by publicity sheer alone. Sheer publicity alone. I hope both parties, both black and white, understand what I'm trying to say here with the videos I'm posting. And stop taking it as a form of insult and take it as a form of education. And learn how to educate yourself. That's why people are so fucking stupid all the time. Nobody don't have no form of self-education no more. Nobody don't know how to interact with people and learn how to talk with one another. Learn how to get along with one another. Nobody don't learn how to read no more. That's another problem. There's a lot of motherfuckers, like, they did a study a while back that the average black and white Americans in general, between the age of 18 to 54, 56, barely read a book. What the fuck is wrong? They literally did a number on dumbing us down like crazy, man. They dumbed you down as mindless cattle. Now, do I think racism exists? Yeah, but not the way how it once was. It's not institutionalized no more. It's psychological now. They can't institutionalize it no more. Integration did not harm the black communities. It was never integration, actually. Actually, integration solved one of our problems. It was the Great Migration. Look that up. Great Migration fucked up black folks. That's what fucked them up. How the fuck you gonna leave acres of land? I'm talking about almost the average black person at the time, the black family at the time, owned like over 300 square acres of land. That's enough to build towns and cities with. To move into the cities. The concrete jungle known as the projects, because the projects was essentially for white people. Because white people were the bottom feeders of society in the United States and throughout the rest of the Americas. Yes, they were. And they left all that big, beautiful property aside. A lot of them still own the titles to those properties and they just have to claim it. But they didn't want to stick around and toughen up. This is after World War II. After World War II, a lot of these dumbass black men heard they black women cry like bitches about they couldn't survive during the Great Depression that was during World War II, by the way, and the Great Depression never ended. I digress. But they decided to pack their bags and move to the cities. Look how well that turned out. Yeah, 40% struck gold, but 60% struck out. And you know what most of that 60% did? At least a good 30% out of that 60% went back to the fucking South. The other 30% decided to stay like dumbasses. What the fuck is wrong with you? If I got 300 square acres of land, let alone 100 square acres of land, I ain't moving to the city. I'll tough that bitch out. Fuck it. I deal with the damn Great Depression. This is G331979 here, and this is the real definition of racism, part 2 of part 4.